But to come back to this, I want to share with you something. I had a professor of anthropology on my television show. I had her on there twice. Her name's Dr. Fatima Jackson, and she is the professor of anthropology at the Maryland University. She said many things in the show, and each time I go back and watch it, I'm amazed that how could we be so blind? And she said, but for a fact, this is what it really is. She said those periods of time, you know, we always say 400 million years ago, then 200 million years ago, 50 million years ago, 3 million years ago, 2.5 million years ago, and this is when you start doing the structure, the bone structure, the head structure, showing how the development of the human supposedly came from these monkeys, coming back again to that topic. She said, but do you know we have periods of time that are called by the name of a certain skeletal structure? Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthal man, the Australopithecine, don't say that too fast, man. And each one of these, they always show you a character that's getting closer and closer, supposedly, to the human. And she said it on our show, and we offered anybody come and prove her different, because, you know, if you know more than the professors, come and tell us. She said, it is known in their realm, in their world, that all of these existed at the same time, always. The reason it's named for one over the others because they have found more skeletons, fossils, remains of a particular type during this so-called period. But never was it that they were exclusive. They were never exclusive. They were always mixed with others at the same time. Whoops. That's a big difference from what I saw when I was in South Africa. This year when we went down there, we went to one of the parks, and they have a walkway down there in the park that has bricks, and as you're walking along, it represents the years of progression, how humans came from monkeys. They're trying to sell you that in South Africa, of all places, the place of apartheid. You know what that is? And they treated the people there, if you had any color at all, you were part of the lower class, and you were not allowed even to consider yourself as a full human. They really did that. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Scary? Uh-huh. Well, that's what they had. Alhamdulillah, they got away from it. It's so much better now. It's really beautiful. And we ask Allah to always make people wake up to things and progress, you know, real progress. Now, as I'm walking along this walkway and looking down at that, I already knew what Dr. Fatima Jackson said, and I was shaking my head thinking, look at this. You walk along and they show you that so many 4.5 billion years, now only 72 million years, and as you get closer and closer, and they're telling you what kind of man lived at that time, and then it finally says Homo sapien. And this is something being offered to children around the world as a fact. The pictures and images that they create in the books really, and when you stop and think about it, is more bizarre than Spongebob Squarepants. All right, who does live under the ocean in a pineapple? Tell me that. Was it lives in a pineapple under the sea? Yeah, all right, you watch too much TV. But I'll give you two examples. One of them is called Piltdown Man. About 100 years ago in UK, they discovered the evidence that once and for all proved beyond a shadow of a doubt human beings in fact did evolve from apes. And how they showed it, here's the skull, take a look. There's the skull, look at the cranium, look at the jawbone, yeah, with a little bit of testing, and they got people to go for that. After the two guys that came up with this had both died, it was discovered, and they looked at it a little bit more, examined with some more progressive science maybe. The jawbone was from some monkey, a chimpanzee or something, but it was only about 800 years back. And the cranium was from something else totally, and they mixed the two together. Two different time periods, way, way apart, and from more of a, I'm sure it was a human skull, the top part of it, but how can you imagine that so many people endorsed it and said there it is, and they start writing their papers, do their themes, they do their thesis, they do their PhD, all based on these things. Now, as soon as they discovered it, they should go back and take everybody's PhD away. Make sense? I mean, you do a fantasy story, you know? Something out of Lord of the Rings. What is this? Weird stuff. But it's okay. Still, they would say like this, still even though that, but we know that there's enough other evidence. All the other evidence has been made since then about this. The hypothesis is coming from this fabricated so-called evidence. Next, right after that, they come up with in America, Nebraska Man. Did you hear about Nebraska Man? Okay, now this one is really big. In the museum, they have the big picture on the wall that was painted. You could look at it and see. Now, in this case, you got a guy here, sort of human looking, a lot of hair sticking out, long black beard coming out. He's got hair is wadded together, and of course he's only got a loincloth on. He's got a bat, a big, you know, club in his hand, and he's like this, and he's got an animal like a deer or something over here like this, and then there's a smaller ape woman looking thing over here beside him, and then the little kid. When they put all of that in there, and you're gonna know, yeah, because we got evidence. Here's the evidence. And they put in the display, they put in the counters around it, everything. But the actual only real evidence that they had was one tooth. I'm not joking. It was one tooth. And everything else they drew off of the tooth and knew from the tooth what must be the shape of this mandible, the jawbone, and understood from this tooth what would be the shape of the head, and understood what would be the color of the skin and the length of the hair from one tooth. That was up for over 20 years, again with the people doing the thesis, the PhDs, coming by, using this for the proof. Look. And yeah, add that up with Piltdown Man. I mean, you're going, whoa, look out. That was a good comparison, because guess what? Someone made the connection, looked at it and said, I've seen a tooth like this before in another museum. They went and checked it out. It was exactly the same tooth from the same prehistoric pig. Overnight, they tore down the whole thing, moved the display out, put something else in its place, and went about their business. These are two of the most famous, but the list goes on and on, trying again and again and again to prove something that just can't be proven, because guess what? It ain't true. Simple as that. Daddy, the king, ain't got no clothes. But when you want to believe something, you just keep telling yourself over and over and over. Just keep saying it enough and convince yourself.